Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike, the Cranky Fan.
How's it going, Grump? I'm a little jet lagged. Had a quick trip back and forth to Seattle. Visit the sister. Went to hockey to see the Kraken and Vegas Golden Knights. By far and away the best arena I've been to in this country. It was a pretty amazing place. And
I was just going to ask you, yeah.
It's unbelievable. What they did was the old Seattle Center had this really cool, iconic roof, like from the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was when they got the hockey team, they basically gutted out the entire arena and kept the roof. So the arena is underground, and there's this roof. It looks like a church from like 1963 when you're like driving down the interstate and you see like a big church, and it's just this really, really cool building. So it was a lot of fun. So I'm still a little jet lagged, but
that's cool. I mean, I was actually really stoked for the expansion team into hockey, the Seattle Kraken. So
yeah, I mean they have the coolest uniforms. I mean Seattle has 3 teams, which I don't like, obviously, but they have the coolest uniforms. They have that color scheme of like that kind of cool turquoisey green.
Yeah,
and it's just it's really, really cool looking. So
yeah, and some somewhat football news. WrestleMania was yesterday, and Pat McAfee got to wrestle. That's kind of awesome. Pat McAfee had like lived out a wrestling fan's like dream. He fought Vince McMahon. He fought Stone Cold. He got stunned, and he was chugging beers. That's everything anyone who's ever wanted to be in pro wrestling to do, and he's fantastic at it too.
So if there was one person from the sports world you'd like to wrestle, and not in a stage way like the WWF, like or WWE, but really could wrestle to the death, who would it be?
Like, as in, I want to kill them?
Okay, if you maybe just or seriously maim them, one of the two.
The first person that comes to mind is Cortland Finnegan.
Okay.
He's just a prick. I mean, if you remember him playing corner for the Titans, he was just always starting shit. And the thing that comes to mind immediately, and I think most people, was when Adoree Jackson just punched the ever-living shit out of him. In the
right.
You remember that? Like where they got into it the play before, and then that next play was not even a play. They just went and just started fighting. And I think that's like really the only time Adoree Jackson ever really had an issue like that. You know what I mean? Like that really speaks to Cortland Finnegan and who he is. And if you remember, he was all part of that Panthers team in 2015 and that game against the Giants with Beckham and Norman. He was all involved in that shit too. I believe he went out there with the baseball bat as well. I absolutely hate that guy. I can't stand Cortland Finnegan. I'm sure there's somebody else I actually hate more, but that's the first one that comes to mind. I would love to stunner him. Suplex.
The 2 people I would like to be would be no surprise went to Florida State. Darnell Dockett.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So in the 2001 Florida State game, purposely 3 times tried to injure Ernest Graham, like twisting his leg in the goal line after tackles. And there was video of him in the locker room saying, "Did you see what I did to Graham? Did you see what I did?" Hurts Ernest Graham. He can't play in the Tennessee game. The week later, we lose our shot to go to the SEC championship game and the national title. So that motherfucker, if I ever see him.
I mean, I can get that one. That's very personal.
And former Giant and former Knoll, Danny Cannell.
Oh,
that guy's just a dick with ears. And everything he says, he's picked up this persona as being Mr. Anti-SEC, and he sounds like
he's embraced it too.
He just sounds like an idiot. I mean, it's just one of those things, like he just sounds like a fake news person you would listen to on Twitter. Like, you know, it's like, okay, I know you have shtick, and I know this is what you're trying to say now and try to be funny, but you sound like an asshole. And
this just sounds like an idiot. Is somebody who wasn't very good. Like
that good at Florida State.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, he beat us in what year was that? Late 90s.
Yeah, it's got to be. So.
But you know, fuck those 2. So yeah, if we ever get on the Just Giants podcast,
yeah, dude, if we ever get to like a tag team match.
Yeah, you guys are more than welcome to be invited to the show, and I'll need to put all my.
Me and Cranky versus Cortland Finnegan and Darnell Dockett.
Beauty.
Yeah.
Let's go.
That one won't end well for us, I don't think. But in actual exciting news, Giants news, it was the new head coach means that they can start their offseason workout program early, so they did. Voluntary workouts. Some guys showed up, some guys didn't. Important to remember, it's voluntary. This is not necessary. It's not required. A lot of this stuff is strength and conditioning. It's not learning plays. So,
Grump, do you think of all the things that happen in an NFL calendar, that's the one thing that people get overexcited about and get overreactionary and emotional about than people who don't show up for voluntary workouts?
It's up there. I don't know if it's the most, but it's definitely up there because it's a conversation every year to the point now where I don't even point it out. Like if it's like if somebody's a no-show and everyone's just like, oh, guess who didn't show up? I just don't even say anything because, I mean, you could point the finger right at Michael Strahan. Just be like, this dude doesn't even show up to
preseason.
Yeah.
He won the Super Bowl. He didn't show up early for preseason.
I mean, that's not even showing up early. That's required. I mean, you're getting fined for not showing up.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't.
Voluntary.
Yeah, it's voluntary.
I mean,
and again,
nice.
I know that people say that like you should be there and whatever, and that's kind of true. But most of what they do is strength and conditioning, and in today's world of professional athletes, they do that stuff on their own all year round anyway. Like the days of doing 2-a-days in training camp was used to get guys to be whipped into shape. These guys don't need to be whipped into shape for the most part now. Now it's a story when they show up out of shape.
I mean, I would say, again, you don't have to be there, but it'd be nice to be there. I mean,
I would have liked Kadarius Toney to be there. I think it would have looked very good on his part for a new coaching staff that he was eager to get in the building and get to work. But I don't really care that he didn't.
I don't think it's a question even of impressing your new coaching staff. I think it's a new coaching staff is trying to instill a new culture.
Sure.
And
yeah.
God knows this team needs culture. And you kind of want to every interaction you can have with your coaching staff. Because remember, 2 years ago, nobody had any interaction with their coaching staff. We had a new head coach who had to install not only an offense, a defense, special teams, a philosophy, but a whole culture through Zoom.
Yeah.
So, in that case, I think it's in your best interest to go, and you want to build, there is something to be said about a team and, building camaraderie with your team and that kind of, togetherness. But again, it's not required. And if he doesn't show up, if Kadarius Toney has a game where he catches 11 passes for 190 yards, no one's going to remember.
Yeah.
If he has a game where he has 4 drops, no one's going to remember. It's kind of like
the only time it's ever going to get remembered is if he is consistently having bad games. That is what's more likely with Toney is that he's going to miss games. I mean, that's the more likely thing that's going to happen with him over the course of his career. Is he's just an oft injured guy, as many of these wide receivers and DBs are nowadays. I don't think the criticism for him is going to be not performing ever.
Yep. And I think the really great coaches out there and the great coaching staffs identify players that are Sunday players.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, what they do from Monday to Saturday is secondary to what they do on Sunday. And I think coaches that are, the extra special ones, they A, value that, understand it, and B, can identify it. Because some people are just loafers and lazy. Some people just, they shine on the biggest stage. And, the grind isn't necessarily for them. So don't waste any time worrying about this or calling up the fan and complaining about it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And along with that, I don't know that we'll ever really talk about this again in future episodes. The voluntary workouts, you think?
Until we have the same speech next year before the...
Well, I meant this year, yeah.
No.
Yeah,
we'll point it out as part of our news, but I'm not going to go into any, who did how many reps or, what kind of stretches they did or...
Yeah. Some stretching news. This week in flexibility.
Well, let's skip that part for talking about me because I am just...
Oh, yeah?
Move my shoulder.
I'm brutal. I've had to work stretches into my life every day because I'm just not flexible.
I really think I'm on the path towards some sort of something with this rotator cuff. It's been...
Rigor mortis?
That might be the next step, and it might be more painless than what I'm feeling in this shoulder right now. So We'll make that a recurring theme on the show going forward. How is
we'll check up on your shoulder.
How's shoulder doing? Because right now it's not good.
That'll be the weekly injury report until we
Yes.
have a real one.
Most doubtful.
Speaking of actual flexibility, some cap flexibility today. Joe Shane has moved some of Adoree Jackson's contract around. They cleared about $6 million today by increasing 2023's cap hit and adding a void year to 2024, which is, how much money is it to the 2024? I think it's like $3 million, just south of $3 million to 2024. In 2023, his cap hit goes up to $19 million. So we are seeing a potential out next year for Adoree Jackson, though I don't think they're going to exercise that.
Yeah, we are with $6.788 million in cap space per over the cap right now, and we need about $12.5 million to sign the rookie class.
Yeah, which we don't need to do on draft day for everybody. Just like, I know the draft is coming up, but they don't usually sign that quickly anyway. There's no reason to force them to sign. We don't have the money. We have time. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I don't expect James Bradberry to be moved until draft day or after.
I mean, the whole universe knows we're trying to move him. Let's try to get a little leverage for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, but I think this is interesting. This move with Adoree Jackson. The fever on Twitter. More than a vocal minority, I think, have been like, well, Shane said we are going to cut $40 million. He said we're not kicking money down the road. And some people are kind of like, oh, same old Giants. Look, we set some pretty high, lofty goals that were most likely unobtainable in this.
We said it at the time, too. We were like, why $40 million? That's like way more than we need.
Yeah. And, we are in cap hell, and we are trying to, undo the poor cap management we've had for the last couple of years. I mean, it's out there on Twitter. You could see, the list of the Gettleman signings and things, and the poor cap management, and why we are where we are. And you can't just snap your fingers and say, we're going to cut $40 million, and then we are scot-free going into 2022. I mean, I think it's reasonable, the moves we've made so far, and even this move, if you have to move some stuff over to 2023 and 2024, so be it. Who knows what the state of this franchise is a year from right now, and what guys that are in our plans now won't be in our plans, and other cuts, and who knows what happens with this draft, if we're gonna trade down and trade out of some things and have more picks for next year. So I don't think, let's not get crazy when a move like this happens and everyone's like, oh, same old Giants. They're just kicking it down the road for some other day of reckoning. I think we are making some pretty prudent, smart moves, so we're not the embarrassing team we were last year. But, there's been some pretty interesting moves that, we're trying to, thread that needle of being not embarrassing and being prepared for next year and the year after that to build the right way.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things to say about this, right? In my opinion, Joe Shane made a mistake and saying too many words to the media. I don't think there's anything wrong with what he said, but basically he was just talking about his general philosophy as a general manager and the things that he likes to do and doesn't like to do. And he said that doing this was a last resort, this kind of adding a void year, kicking money into the future. He did not say he wouldn't do it this year or anything like that. This is not a typical year that a GM has to deal with. GMs do not typically have to deal with this level of cap flexibility. I mean, they're coming off of a down cap year because of a random pandemic that we haven't seen since the 1930s or whenever the Spanish flu was. This isn't a normal everyday year for the general manager. He just got here. He's inheriting a terrible cap situation, some giant bloated contracts on some young players. So when he said that this is a last resort, he didn't mean that he's not going to do it and that he's not going to do it this year. This year is an exception to the way he would like to do business. That is just obvious. I mean, that's not even it's more than just a fact.
And just look at the numbers too. We're not talking about a contract that's gonna.
Dude, we're talking about kicking $3 million into a year where they have like $225 million in cap space or something like that.
Somebody that has to get deferred. I think he did a pretty good job. But this is a town and this is a market and this is a fan base where, when a phrase is uttered by a coach, a general manager, a player, whoever, it can easily turn.
It just lives there now.
It becomes like a buzzword. It becomes a mocking thing and something that will end up in their obituary and on their tombstone. And let's, again.
I mean, this has become his
right
computer guy's thing, right? Like this has become like that Dave Gettleman quote about the computer fellas or whatever the hell he said. I mean, this is that same thing.
Hog mollies.
Yeah, last resort is now like in the Giants vernacular. But the fact is that every single major beat writer for the Giants understood that one of the 3 big contracts would have to be tampered with. Four, I get 3, 4, I don't know. Adoree Jackson, Kenny Golladay, Leonard Williams. Those guys, their contract was going to get screwed with. James Bradbury was a given. Every single beat writer knew that one of those contracts was getting screwed with. They've all put out articles about it. And by the way, every single one of them did the same thing we did. We had a whole exercise trying to figure out how you even cut $40 million and field a team that isn't going to be terrible. And none of us could really do it well.
And if I recall, neither of us got to 40 million.
Neither one of us made it to 40 million.
I think I was 5 or 6 million. You were close, because we didn't do anything to anybody else's contracts. We had no restructuring, none of that stuff. So just because we can kind of look and see like, oh, you can't do it. These guys are professionals, and they, they're dealing with, other factors too. So, I think he came pretty close, and something that's not going to kill us next year or in future years.
I also don't have a problem with this happening to Adoree Jackson anyway. I mean, if this was the only offseason move that we did to clear space and we didn't need to make $40 million and they just did this, whatever. I mean, he's a young dude that perfectly fits the defense that we're trying to run. He's coming off of a very good year where he was barely even targeted. He was playing so well. I mean, he's young. I don't understand what the problem is with this contract. I mean, I would be okay with this move even if we didn't need to desperately clear money.
Well, it's nothing to do with him personally or the contract. Again, it's that backlash you get when you say things.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and it's a Gettleman signing. So,
yeah,
I mean, I know I'm blocked by Pat Leonard, but I saw the tweet where he said that the worst contract on the roster just got worse, and I just don't agree with that. That was what he said. So, I mean, I don't even think it's the worst contract because I think he's a fantastic player.
Well, I'm not getting the NyQuil out because I won't have any problem sleeping tonight.
Yeah.
With this situation.
What is going to keep me up at night is the Eagles trade today. So the Eagles traded away some draft picks. They had 3 first-round picks, so you knew something was moving this year. And they traded away both the 16th and the 19th pick and the 194th, which is their 6th-round pick, to New Orleans, who went and got the 18th pick. And gave their 18th pick to the Saints. To the Eagles, they gave the 18th overall pick, the 101st, which is a 3rd-round pick, a 237th, which is a nothing 7th-round pick, but then they get a 2023 1st-round pick, which is terrible for us, and a 2024 2nd-round pick, which is also bad for us. Why is it bad for us? Because they also need a quarterback, and now they have the ammo to move past us no matter what. I mean, even if we get another 1st-round pick next year, which I've been clamoring for, I'm not sure that we have the ammo because they also have two 2nd-round picks in 2024. Then they could just deal one of those away as well.
And also signals they're not going for a quarterback this year either. They're deferring to next year as well. Well, we have the ammo. We can always go into the future for picks as well. It's not the only picks to play around with next year.
Yeah, but it makes it that much harder.
Sure.
Where it was already kind of a bad situation to be in, where you kind of feel like you need to trade one of your picks this year to get one next year, and now you do that and it may not even work. So, I mean, this sucks. I'm not going to lie. And this is some great move by Howie Roseman. But I've been seeing this on Twitter, that one of the picks being moved away is a holdover from when they tanked the last game of the season, 2020, and all that other stuff. And while that may be the case, it certainly had nothing to do with their intention at the time.
No.
So, I mean, you can connect the dots if you want, but you can't act like it's playing 3D chess.
The only solace you can put in any of this is we don't know what's going to happen in the NFC East this year. I mean, Dallas can win 12 games. They can win 6. Philly, it's such a bad division. Philly can end up winning 10, 11 games, and, their picks aren't as good as you think, and it's harder for them to make moves also. So, maybe they decide Jalen Hurts is their guy. They have a successful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and that's the other thing. When they tanked, that was like Jalen Hurts was playing, and they pulled him, and he was playing well. So.
Well, that was the tank, was when they pulled him.
But that's what I'm saying, is it's not even like they to put the exclamation point, I guess, on they didn't know what they were doing at the time, is their quarterback was currently playing fairly well.
Yeah. I mean, and also the
excuse. And Doug Peterson's not even there anymore, so.
We really want to see what our third string quarterback is all about. That's just a flaming pile of horse shit. I mean, come on.
You know what's sad is he actually played better than Jake Fromm.
That's true.
Yeah. In a must-win game, well, not for them, no. But it was a must-win for Washington, wasn't it?
It was a must-win for Washington. It was Washington and the Giants had postseason implications for that game. And, they... Yeah, well, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, it's news, but it's not really going to be anything more than just some hypothetical numbers and stuff until draft day.
Actually, now that I'm thinking of this, we got a couple of seconds here. Hypothetical. What if the Giants did make the playoffs? Do you think Joe Judge would have had any more of a leash last year, or you think it was just everything had happened, just fell apart, and it would have been like it had been gone anyway?
I don't know. Because I think he was fairly close to keeping it together not keeping it together, but keeping his job last year. I think he was kind of close to keeping it, because there was so much to be said, and so much has come out since then that there was some disconnect between him and Gettleman, like with certain personnel moves, like getting Ifedi out of Negbo, who did Odenigbo, who came here and was just absolutely not a fit for what Patrick Graham ran at all, and they knew it, and he instantly became like a third stringer. He's a dude who had like 6.5 sacks the year before or something like that. I think it's possible that he could have kept his job with that on his resume if they went to the playoffs that year. But it's such a slight... What we're talking about here is not him doing anything differently. It's simply what the Eagles did.
Kind of like, well, we made the playoffs. I mean...
But I mean, I think some of it too...
Times we weren't a playoff team, we would have made the playoffs.
But here's the thing. If they went in that game and they really performed and they almost won or did win that first playoff game, then I think he could keep his job. Mm-hmm. I think that it's not outside the realm of possibility at all.
Well, also, I think it might have changed that whole offseason, too. Like, okay, we can build on this. We made it to the second round. Maybe the moves they make, maybe they get a better backup quarterback. Maybe, they're in a little more of a win-now mode than that half and half they were last year. So I guess...
Maybe.
The butterfly...
I mean, they were kind of in a win. I mean, they certainly threw money around last year.
Yeah, but I think they would have spent more on a capable backup quarterback.
I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter because I think Joe Judge was doomed. If they had won, I think that just would have further driven that Jason Garrett belonged there, and they wanted to double down on that. I mean, unless he got another job after that, which I really doubt.
Well, Gettleman probably would have been gone. I mean, right?
I think Gettleman was gone no matter what.
So that little schism probably would have been over.
But I honestly think that Gettleman being gone, if they had went to the playoffs, they would have transitioned right into Kevin Abrams.
Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe it's for the best that didn't happen. I don't know.
Well, what needs to be changed eventually should happen immediately. So that's kind of what happened.
And speaking of things changing immediately, we're going to get into our position review. As with most positions on this team, they need to do something about this. This is a bad spot. And they've already kind of done something. With the off-ball linebacker, the middle linebacker, whatever you want to call it, the Giants simply don't have much there. They have Blake Martinez, who is coming off of an ACL injury. He did sustain that very early in the year last year. I believe it was week 3 against the Falcons, I want to say.
I believe so, yes.
I'm pretty sure it was a home game because I'm pretty sure I was clutching my hair in the stands.
What?
Oh, sorry. I don't have hair. Clutching my hat. Yeah, so they have that, and I'm not really sure how much of a scheme... I don't think that Blake Martinez is not a scheme fit, but he certainly fit really well in Patrick Graham's like more zone system, more step back and keep everything in front of you kind of style. I still think that he can play downhill. I think that he can blitz through the A-gap pretty well. I think that he can cover even in man situations pretty well. So I think he'll be okay in Wink Martindale's system. But again, this is a guy coming off of injury. Tate Crowder, on the other hand, is just barely passable as a starting linebacker. I would describe him as fringe, but he does have some athletic ability, and he's also newer to the position. As a former running back at Georgia, that's how he was recruited. And
right.
I mean, you know what the depth chart at running back is like in Georgia. So he transitioned over to linebacker, which, by the way, that's a pretty serious depth chart as well at Georgia. Routinely, year after year, their linebackers are pretty good. So he has some athleticism. He can kind of blitz a little bit. He can run downhill. He can cover a little bit, but he's still feeling it out, and he can be exploited. Right now, I mean, given that we don't know what the deal is with Blake Martinez, this is really scary to me, is the middle linebacker spot. We don't really have an edge presence. I don't really know what our scheme is going to be like for our defensive linemen getting upfield, but it feels like with a lot of Martindale stuff, we might be looking at defensive linemen kind of controlling offensive linemen and letting the linebackers do the talking. You know what I'm saying? So we might need some real ballers here. And I think that they're going to prioritize this position at some point. Either, I would hope that they do it this year. I really hope that they have a starter in mind to help out, because I don't feel very comfortable. How do you feel about this position?
Yeah, the Blake Martinez injury was week 3 against Atlanta. And that face I just made was my weekly shit the Lightning got scored on again face. So it's becoming another weekly staple on the Just Giants podcast. But yes, again, the major exercise we've been doing, Grump and I, is kind of prioritizing all of the needs we have on this team. And everywhere we've turned, every week has been, this is a need for the Giants to improve. This is a need for the Giants to improve. This is a need for the Giants to improve. And this is certainly one of them. I look at the roster, I see a lot of things like, Tate Crowder, 7th round, Cortland, 7th round, Cam Brown, 6th round. These are guys that are, they're not 5-star recruits. So you have bodies, but the overall talent level and the overall productivity level has to increase. So again, put that on your shopping list of, like your Christmas list to Santa Claus. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. What does Santa Claus actually give you? What do you need the most?
Santa's going to have a broken back carrying that sack around. Well, I will say I was a little bit more scared about this position. I mean, I don't feel great about Blake Martinez returning. I certainly think he's the high effort guy. I think he's got the right head on his shoulders to get through an ACL injury. I really do. Mm-hmm. But that first season back, we see it every year. That first season back, they're just not quite the same. They're out there and they got the name on the jersey, but it doesn't really look like them. And it's a position with a lot of change of direction. So but to be fair, I felt a lot worse when I had him pretty much written off as being cut.
We both did, I believe. When we did
Well, I mean, I had written him off by like week 7. I mean, it was just like at that point I was like, what is this team going to do? I mean, they have no cap money. They're not winning shit this year. So, I mean, I thought Blake Martinez was dead as a doornail for this team very early last year. Going all the way back to the bye week last year, I think was the first time I said it on the podcast. We did 2 episodes. I did one with you and one with Victor Perez, where we kind of went over the roster and where this team was at. That said, I do feel a little bit better that they at least were able to renegotiate his salary, get him down here on the cheap, and have some version of him, some version of a bona fide NFL starter on the roster. That's at least something.
It's a starter,
but it ain't much.
And if he goes down again or he's not 100% healthy, we got a problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was already kind of the problem. Is we were lucky that we had Martinez in 2020 for all 16 games playing at a high level. It was I believe it was one of the question marks about him is the year before. I don't think he had played very much. I think he was injured in Green Bay in 2019 or phased out based on their defensive scheme or something like that. I don't know. That said, I'm really hoping that this position gets addressed in the draft. And I will say that I kind of hope that it gets addressed in the draft more so than safety, which is also a huge position of need. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It's still early. I still have to look at the team as an aggregate and be a little bit less laser-focused position by position, which will come in the coming weeks.
Well, again, my timeline and horizon for this team is not this year or even next year. So if it's something that has to be addressed next year, so be it. I think you get the best guy you can, and if it turns out we go safety as opposed to inside linebacker this year, okay. If they don't address it next year, we got problems where maybe next year we don't have as many holes to fill after a successful draft and tinkering with the capper and stuff. So
yeah,
I'm a little more. I am as a fan and as a follower of this team, I've kind of adopted that we're almost an expansion team.
Kinda, yeah.
And I've taken a lot of the emotion out of worrying about what we're going to do this year record-wise. I said that, all off-season when we did our cut-down list and all these different things, that I'm not worried about the record this year. It was one of my 6 points, my 6-point rebuild plan. And I'm giving myself and I'm giving this team a couple years to do this rebuild. So, again, we've identified almost every position group we've gone through. We've said, this needs improvement. This needs improvement. And I'm willing to, if we don't address it this year, it's not a failure of the draft. We don't have to start the fire Joe Shane chance, but it just means it'll be more of a priority in the year after. So, and that's okay.
Yeah. How many years in a row have you not cared about the record?
Last year I cared about the record.
Okay.
I mean, last year was, we were, we had a taste of what it's like to be in the playoffs, and yeah. I think. We didn't go all or nothing last year, but I felt good after year one with Joe Judge for making chicken salad out of chicken shit, and I was concerned about the record last year. I wanted to see continued improvement. I wanted to go from a team that made the playoffs potentially to being a playoff team. It was a bad division. The opportunity was there, and a lot of things that were in our control and out of our control prevented that. And now we're finally, for the first time in probably since the Eli draft, have hit the reset button, really committed to a rebuild.
Yeah.
And I know right. A lot of fans think, oh, this is year 12 of a rebuild. It's not. We are finally done it. And I think we're doing it the right way. I think we're doing it the smart way, the measured way. Again.
Well, so far. Yeah.
So far. I mean, the test will be what happens next year if we surprise and go 9-8.
Oh yeah, that would surprise the shit out of me.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what if that happens? What happens to our course of action going forward?
Nothing. I think you keep doing what you're doing. You got lucky.
That's where that's when we find out what we got in Joe Shane.
Good point.
That's where it's like, okay, we have a keeper. We have a guy who's committed to a sustained, nuanced building and sustaining of a franchise. If you see all of a sudden we go back to, we just borrow against the future and bring in guys trying to make that
stretch that 9-8 into 12-5
exactly.
or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right now, this position to me needs to get addressed in the draft, and I think that they should do it sooner rather than later. There is some talent for off-ball linebacker in this draft. They don't need to break the bank because, in my opinion, there is not super top-end draft talent here. There is a couple guys in the top end that I kind of like, but there's certainly no Ray Lewis in this draft. You know what I mean? There's nobody that is just a clear-cut inside linebacker that's going to be just a madman. But there is some intriguing names, and there's some names that I've mentioned before. But to me, the best inside linebacker here is probably Nicole Dean from Georgia. Now, I will say that I have him as a talent level that's somewhere between the first and second round, and that to me is the hardest group of players to really pin a position on, because it's like you're picking between players like 20 through 40 or somewhere in there, and it's so easy to just mix and match them wherever. So I'm probably a little off on him. But remember, there's some things about Nicole Dean that are not that great. For instance, he's only 5'11". He's only 229 pounds. That is very small and very light for the position. However, he comes in like a bat out of hell, and he's so fast off the snap. And Georgia's defense their defensive line's job is to, like I was saying with Wink Martindale, potentially, is to kind of suck up a lot of the offensive line attention and let the linebackers do the talking. Let them go in there. So all three of Georgia's linebackers this year were pretty productive. Nicole Dean was productive. I mean, and he also has some coverage ability. He looks pretty comfortable in zone coverage, but for the most part, he didn't really cover a whole lot. So, I mean, that's just another thing where, he's getting blown up, Nicole Dean, for some of his tape because he has some real shock value plays. And believe me, I would love Nicole Dean on this team. I would love it, especially, just the sheer athleticism with him next to Tay Crowder alone, who's a fringe starter, puts us in an advantage. But he's not perfect. I mean, sometimes he's a little over aggressive. He can overrun plays. He can get fooled by play action and overrun it. But for the most part, he's a very good pass rusher as a blitzer. He's an ideal spy for your more mobile quarterbacks. I mean, if you have to go up against Patrick Mahomes, having a linebacker to just kind of sit back kind of in that like middle coverage and just keep their eyes on the quarterback and make sure that they're not running free, that's a perfect job for him.
Well, forget about even, Mahomes. Think about who the quarterbacks are in our division.
Sure. Yeah, Dak Prescott. I mean, and those are well, Jalen Hurts is probably the most mobile and most threatening. Dak Prescott can move and do enough to damage you. I don't know that he needs a spy specifically, but he has the makeup speed to be, in coverage and what I want to say, not negate, but minimize the damage that somebody like Dak Prescott can do on the ground. As an impact player, I think the Kobe Dean is fantastic. I think he's more of a downhill player. He's not so much in coverage, which is why I have him in that first to second round range. But make no mistake about it, I would absolutely love him. So as far as where the Giants are drafting, I mean, we're talking about now trading down and him being available, or I think if he's sitting there at the top of the second round, I think you really got to consider Nicole Dean.
That's what I was going to say. He sounds like a guy where if we trade down with the second pick, he would be a more appealing candidate.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in the top 10 range for linebacker at all.
I don't think that's as pressing as a need as the other things we talked about to use those two picks.
Right. But also in that same little group is another player that I have mentioned multiple times. He was on my preseason watch list, and that's linebacker from Utah, Devin Lloyd. Now, Devin Lloyd is not nearly as athletic or as impactful as Nicole Dean, but he's a lot better in coverage. He has a lot more experience in coverage, and he's your ideal height. 6'3", 240 pounds. That's about what you want at inside linebacker. And he looks very comfortable in zone coverage. He looks very comfortable in coverage. And he's fast. I mean, his 40 time is unimpressive, 4.66. He doesn't look like he plays at that speed. So I don't really care so much about 40 times in general. If I have questions about a guy's speed, they can make me feel better about it, but I don't feel like he's a 4.6 player on the field. The same way I don't feel anything about Kyle Hamilton's shitty 4.40 time.
At the combine, do they do like the 20-yard dash, like a shorter little burst?
Yeah, they do the shuttle and the 3-cone drill. I don't have those. A lot of linebackers didn't do shit at this combine, and I don't follow the combine live, so I don't really know why. But important to note about Nicole Dean is that he actually strained his pec muscle training for the combine and didn't do anything. And I don't think he did anything at his pro day either. So I think he scheduled a later pro day to do more stuff.
What's the status of the injury?
Like I said, their pro day, he didn't do anything, and that was like a week ago.
No, I mean, is this something like they think it's going to linger into like
training camp? I don't think so, because like I said, he scheduled a later date to do more exercises for.
Okay.
I think that's like maybe next week or something like that. So he should be fine, but he hasn't done anything yet, so I can't really say that. But back to Devin Lloyd. I really like the way that he does blitz. I think he does a pretty good job of using his hands and his speed. I think that he's good to fight in and jump gaps. I think he's effective as a blitzer. I would like him to be a little bit more decisive, but I mean, he's playing in Utah. It's not really the same kind of defense at Georgia where you're just surrounded by elite talent and you can just kind of pin your ears back or trust that everybody around you is doing the right thing. I mean, that's just my opinion anyway.
Well, the Pac-12 is, again, it's not like he's playing in the MAC or something.
Sure. I mean, he has to play Chip Kelly's offense at UCLA. Oregon every year is something. Oregon State from time to time is something. So
Cal, never mind. Sorry, Mars.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is she in the room?
Well, I think she's serving divorce papers as we speak.
Calling up a lawyer. But yeah, I mean, Devin Lloyd is fantastic. He has some different issues, but he's not as confident and not as aggressive as Nicole Dean. So he doesn't look like the bat out of hell that I think Nicole Dean is going to be. But I think that he's got a place in the NFL doing a lot more coverage stuff. I mean, he's close to like, I haven't felt this good about a linebacker in coverage coming out of the draft in a long, long time. So that's saying something, and I would feel very comfortable if the Giants took Devin Lloyd. I would like Nicole Dean better, but I also don't think that Devin Lloyd... I don't know. I mean, I think that would be a huge upgrade for this team, is getting something like that. And again, this is that same range where if they're sitting there at the top of the second round, I have a strong consideration for either one of these guys. I have even said in the past that if the Giants traded down to like, somewhere in the late teens to consider Devin Lloyd there. I've backed off on that like a little bit now that I've done full research on the position, but I still really like them and I wouldn't be totally butthurt if they did that.
Quite a visual.
Yeah. Quay Walker is another guy from Georgia. He's not quite as good. He's not nearly as impactful, but he also had a fantastic year. I think he would fit in really well. But this is really where the sweet spot is. Between rounds 3 and 4, I think there's a lot of NFL talent here. And these are all guys that have like one big question mark about them, at least. Typically, that's it. Just the one big question mark, and you can kind of roll with that as a starter, in my opinion. And I think in rounds 3 and 4, you're kind of getting a good player, and you want someone that can see the field or that you can develop or something like that. And there's a dude that has been making some noise around, and that's Leo Chanel from Wisconsin. Another one, 6'3", 250. He's about the only guy that has an NFL body that I'm going to highlight, I think. But I mean, that right there, he doesn't need to add a pound. He doesn't need to do anything. He's already got a good NFL physique. Just got to hit that NFL locker room. You know what I mean? He runs a 4.5 40. So I mean, he can move too. He's not just a big guy. His thing really for me is, I would like him to be a little bit more active in coverage. I think that he can be exploited in zone coverage. He doesn't look as comfortable. I would like to see him a little bit more active, a little to stick to his receiver that comes into his zone instead of just chilling in the zone. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and the NFL is all about tight windows. So if you're not running up to whoever's entering your zone, you're not doing zone coverage. You're just standing in a spot. He's going to have to develop that. And I don't know that he's ever going to develop as a man cover guy. So coverage is going to be the big thing with Leo Chanel. And it's going to be up to those NFL scouts, general managers, front office guys to determine, I guess, and coaches too, right? To determine if that's a trait that they think they can develop from him. Because if they can't, I would bump him down a little bit and see if he's chilling closer to the 4th round, maybe the late 3rd, something like that. And just use him to be downhill. Because he is speedy, he is aggressive. I think he times his blitzes really well, and I think he's got the ability to fight through blocks pretty well, which is, at the NCAA level, a lot of what we see from guys who blitz, taking on O-lineman blocks, a lot of what they do is they just kind of throw their body weight into them and hope that they can blow up the block enough to just keep running and run past them. And what happens a lot of times is that's not effective, right? I mean, that's just kind of obvious, especially you get up to better and better linemen.
It's not going to happen in the NFL.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to happen in the NFL. So guys that come in there and they show that fight to me, where they'll keep moving their hands, keep fighting. I don't even care that they're experienced or good hand fighters so much as I care that they're already using their hands actively.
How much is that coachable versus you just...
See, that, to me, I think you can develop hand fighting moves if you're already using your hands. I think it gets harder when guys aren't used to using their hands. You get a lot of that Matt Peart syndrome where they're just not aggressive. They're just not in that fight. Like, hit the guy. You play football. Hit him. Hit him. You know what I mean? The guys that understand that much but don't really know what they're doing, that can be taught. But you can't teach someone to want to hit somebody. And that's a big thing for me. I look for that at every single position. Leo Chanel wants to hit people, so I am okay with that. I think you can develop him into an animal at linebacker. I would be totally okay with Leo Chanel there. More importantly is a guy that I am not seeing anybody talk about. Really nobody. And he comes from a school that I like the way their defense is coached. I like the way their defense plays. Malcolm Rodriguez from Oklahoma State. I don't know why no one's talking about this guy. Every negative I see about him is that he's not great in coverage, which he's okay. He's not great, but he's okay. And he's short. Okay, he's 5'11 and 232. Nicole Dean, 5'11, 229. Not great in coverage, not great in coverage. So what's the problem here? Why is Nicole Dean first-round talent and Malcolm Rodriguez I'm seeing in the 4th and 5th round? That makes no sense to me.
Is it kind of branding because he played at Georgia?
I mean, it's probably, but to me, when I look at what Nicole Dean played around, he played around tons of, all 3 linebackers there are going to be draft picks. All 3.
They'll probably have close to 9 starters in the NFL at some point, that Georgia team.
Easily. Yeah. And when I look at Malcolm Rodriguez, he's playing Oklahoma State. He's playing in a different conference where they, air quotes, don't play defense in the Big 12, right?
Certainly not like the SEC does.
Certainly not like, and I'm not trying to say that, right? I totally understand that their tape is not nearly the same.
Well, it's a
right?
different type, it's a different style of play out there than it is.
Sure.
South. Yeah.
And I'm really not trying to make an apples to apples comparison. There is no comparison. I have Nicole Dean ahead of Malcolm Rodriguez. What I'm saying is that there's no reason for this. At least I don't see one for this massive gap between the two of them, because what I see is someone who has the speed to turn and run with running backs, and he gets right in the hip pocket and runs alongside the receivers. I think he's pretty good in coverage. He's okay.
So you're seeing him like 4th, 5th round, or what are you seeing?
I see him. This is 3rd round talent to me. Right now, yeah. Right now, what I'm seeing around the internet and whatever, which I can't really trust this early in April, is him way later than that. So if they can get him in the 4th round, to me, this is 3rd round talent. That's just the way I see it. As a blitzer, I think he's disruptive at the least. He uses his extreme speed, he's a 4.5 runner, to knife into gaps really well. He causes havoc. And it's one of those things where it's like maybe he doesn't get home, but he screws everything up for offenses. He just completely blows up blocking screens. He might get some other guys in. And remember, he's playing at Oklahoma State, so it's not like they have this team of 11 pass rushers. So, no. I mean, he may be screwing stuff up to the point where other guys have a chance to do something and they're just not good enough.
Right.
You know, I think he's decisive. I think he reads and reacts really well. I think he's excellent against the run. He's fantastic. He's a tackling machine. And this is another guy that uses his hands really well. You'll see him consistently fighting O-linemen to get free. I like Malcolm Rodriguez. I would absolutely welcome him on this team. To me, he is the first true super diamond in the rough that I've found. Yeah, and I guarantee you, I don't think he's going in the 3rd round because I just simply haven't seen it around anywhere. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe I fully expect to be wrong about stuff, but I feel very confident about that one. You know, the 3rd and 4th rounds also have other guys like Damon Clark from LSU, who's pretty good. I was a little underwhelmed from him at the Senior Bowl personally. Balen Spector at Clemson. Chad Muma from Wyoming, I actually did like at the Senior Bowl. He's just a little athletically limited. And this one's interesting. Christian Harris is kind of polarizing, the Alabama prospect, right? I mean, he's got all the tools, and I just don't see the production from him. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. You know, you face Alabama every single year. Did Christian Harris ever really come up as a guy who just screwed everything up for Florida?
No. I mean, to be very honest, in the last couple of years we played Bama, their defense really hasn't screwed us up that much.
Yeah. Not in 2020. I mean, that was a shootout.
Yeah, that SEC. And even last year, I mean, quite honestly, we had their defense on their heels. You know, for the second half of the game, we killed them in time of possession. We were able to grind running the ball and stuff. So I was if you didn't have like the Bama jersey on those guys, you'd be like, this is a solid team. This isn't great. Bryce Young was really good, but the defense was nothing. It certainly was not Georgia's defense.
No,
not at all.
Yeah, and Christian Harris, I think his time at Alabama has been marked by underwhelming. Mm-hmm. And to me, I watch it and I see all the traits there and I get it. I just don't see the on-field production. And if he can't produce at the college level, I just don't understand how people think he's going to produce at the NFL level.
Opportunity afforded you too. Like
Absolutely.
Alabama's second to none with facilities and coaching and support and playing under the lights against the best teams and the most media coverage of any college team. And if you don't do it there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean,
do you turn it on? You go to the NFL. I'm not sure about that.
Again, I could be wrong about this because I think everybody else has Christian Harris a little bit higher than I do, but he doesn't even look that physical to me. Like usually, I'm used to seeing Alabama linebackers at the very least. Like Reggie Ragland, Alabama linebacker. I thought he was going to be a badass in the NFL, the way he played at college. I was wrong. He's not a badass. He's barely functioning. We signed him.
You just don't know about guys. You throw money into the mix. Now, this will be something interesting going forward is with NILs and these kids who are going to get to start to be paid in college. It's going to be an interesting test to see, another kind of data point you can see. How do they handle having money?
Because they already have fame. I mean, these guys are gods on college campuses.
Right, but they don't have money unless you go to Georgia where they pay you. But now, the elite of the elite, the guys you're really trying to dissect with a fine-tooth comb, their first-round picks, they're all going to have varying degrees of NIL money in addition to the bagmen on their campuses. So you'll be able to see, that first taste of cash, how they changed. They still have that same work ethic they did. Are they still hungry? Are they still – now it's more of a crapshoot with a lot of these guys, again, unless they went to Georgia. So it's good. I think that's going to help with the process of evaluating guys, their psyche and what's in their brain as opposed to just the physical attributes and, how they run around in their underwear, for example.
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion on that personally, but it is going to be interesting to see how it changes things.
Yeah, I'm not saying
no, I know, but
having them paid. I'm just talking about the effect of getting paid, how you can another way you can potentially evaluate them, so it's less of that. Like a guy like Reggie Ragland. I'm not using him specifically because I don't know his situation, but a guy that was so dominant in college while he's not in the NFL, does he not have that motivation because he's gotten paid? And even paid. We're not talking about the blockbuster contract. Getting money in the NFL is it's still a life-changing amount of money from when you were in college or in high school, and especially if you're from, a poor area.
Yeah. I don't know how that's going to change things, but I know it's going to change things. I mean, we're already seeing. I mean, I don't know how much of an effect that's going to be. I thought that the transfer portal thing was going to super mess things up, and I actually think that it's helped. I think it's helped guys like Jermaine Johnson, who was stuck in Georgia, get to FSU. I mean, not for nothing, Jermaine Johnson we didn't talk about this on the Edge episode, but the dude found his way out of JUCO into Georgia and then found his way into Florida State where he could be the guy and really put numbers on. I mean, he has really bet on himself, and it worked out for him.
The transfer portal is fantastic for athletes because, you commit to a school before the transfer portal, you're stuck there unless you transfer.
And you don't know what the coaching situation is going to be like.
Well, that's it. The coaches can leave at a drop of a hat. I mean, what's his name? Who was at Oklahoma? You'd think, is there one of the more stable jobs for the next decade plus? And all of a sudden, I'm gone. I'm going to,
and all of a sudden, you're a quarterback who's been recruited there to play in a very specific offense, and they hire some other guy who doesn't run your offense, doesn't want you there, and so what? You're screwed?
Right.
Yeah. I agree. But, I thought that was going to screw up everything.
And then there's schools like, the Georgias and the Bamas and now the A&Ms who they're monster recruiting machines. They're top 3 every year, and they draft, 4 5-star quarterbacks and 11 5-star offensive linemen. It's like, well, they're all not going to play.
Yeah.
So if you lose that battle to be the starter, you're a 5-star recruit looking at going to the NFL, and you're going to be riding the pine.
Yeah, and you're not going to get drafted high with no tape.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I think it's a net positive. I mean, it gets to be very frustrating as a fan of a college because, and I'm sure
you land a big guy
as
and then he leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, great, I got this guy. Oh, he's gone. So free agency has this. For who it's intended for, the athletes, it's great for them. For us, we have to kind of deal with the emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, well, that's all part of sports, I guess.
That's it.
Any closing thoughts on the linebacker position?
Like I said before, again, it's on our list, but and if we don't, solidify it this year, I'm not going to be too upset because it probably means most likely we've addressed something else of equal or greater concern. And, we'll deal with it. We could always, and again, I preface this every show, there's always cut down day, and we could pick up somebody to kind of help with the depth in the position and hold it until next year where we can draft, where we don't have as many needs that we have to. This time next year, we're not going to be talking about the need necessarily for a tackle.
Yeah.
Or maybe not for an edge
Hopefully,
rusher.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of the needs that we have will be quelled and we can concentrate with, because I'll say this much, any linebacker that they get in the fifth round, the late fourth all the way through the end, good chance that they're going to be a special teamer only. Mm-hmm. I mean, this team is full of 7th and 6th round draft picks. Right. At the position. Another one there is going to do pretty much the same thing unless they're falling for no reason.
Get them a year younger and maybe a little cheaper. That's all.
Yeah. So that's going to be it. We're going to finish up the defense before moving to the rest of the offense. On our next episode, we'll be doing our defensive line stuff, which, believe it or not, is actually a need, but probably the smallest need on the team. The least immediate.
The least immediate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's something that we could potentially defer to next year.
Yeah. 100%. But a need nonetheless, as we have a giant contract there that probably won't see the end of its lifespan with Leonard Williams. We have a 5th-year issue going on with Dexter Lawrence. We got to figure out if we're going to sign him to that now before he can demand a gigantic contract, now that the defensive line contracts have all been spiked by the BJ Hills of the world, etc.
Do you think Dexter Lawrence is in line for a ginormous contract?
I think that he is going to command more money than people think because the defensive line market spiked this year, and I think that NFL people value what he does more than fans do. So I think he's going to surprise some people. Like the players know what he does. It's not flashy. It doesn't show up on stat sheets for him very often, but he has a lot of versatility. He's very frustrating for offensive linemen. He tends to suck up multiple blockers and allow other players to make plays. It's an important thing that teams put a premium on. So I think that he'll command more money than people realize, but he's not going to be getting any Dexter Leonard Williams kind of deal or anything like that. So,
No.
But I think he'll make more than BJ Hill. So I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but. It might behoove the Giants to give him that 5th-year option now while it's a set price and not when they want to potentially re-sign him next year and have to deal with it. Yeah, exactly. So we will go over all that stuff on next episode of Just Giants, and we will see you there on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. for the audio version. And, of course, these episodes on YouTube where they are better viewed. And we are on Twitter at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan. I post a lot more draft stuff on there, so be sure to follow me if you are interested in any of that stuff.
And it's time for my yearly announcement. Next week, Friday starts the baseball season. We are all united. We are all together blue. But starting Friday, I think our paths diverge. As some of you may know, I am a diehard Tampa Bay Rays fan. Most of you are not, so don't take anything baseball related personal, no matter how much I
strictly business.
It's strictly business, Sonny. But no. So I rip on the Red Sox just as much as I do on the Yankees.
That's true.
I try to keep it fair, so don't hate me. You may want to maybe mute me for a week or so, but don't unfollow, please. And we'll all sit back. Maybe we'll plan a a Just Giants Yankee Rays game at Yankee Stadium. I know I talked to Bobby and Justin over at Talking Giants that we might do that. So maybe we'll have like a special outing this summer. So
I'll get drunk for no reason.
Punch me in the face if you want, or talk Giant football, one of the two.
Yeah, I mean, if it's me, I'm probably gonna get drunk in the sun because I don't care about baseball. But I mean, that's what baseball is good for, right? It's good for getting a
drunk in the sun, exactly.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We will see you all sober next week. Go Giants.
Go Giants.